In this session, we will talk about ethics in scholarly work. Of course, this is the last session, but not the least important one, maybe the most important one. Why do ethics have to be on top of agenda today? I mean, we read many things in the news uh, about professional ethics, and it is also important in scientific research as well. The thing is, there's a saying in Turkish. It's more or less like, if you, uh, fix the first button of of your shirt wrong, the other ones cannot be right. That's the idea. They will be wrong as well. So we take some decisions at different steps of research or our studies, let's say, and if we take a wrong turn, it is quite hard to reach a correct point after taking any wrong turns. That's the idea, I guess, and I think it makes sense. Here are a list of ethical issues in scholarly work, but you should keep in mind that this list is not exhaustive. There can be many other cases of ethical issues in scholarly work, and namely they are the concerns about principle of harm. These are the most important ones, or most popular ones, we can say. Concerns about proper data and collection and usage. How do we do it? Fabrication of data problem. Falsification and validation of results. Concerns about sources of financial support as biasing factor. We will see. Concerns about plagiarism. This is quite often again. Concerns about self-plagiarism and duplicate submissions. Unfortunately, this is as well. And concerns about authorship of submission as well. Crediting the efforts of people. We will just briefly talk about each of them in this session. Okay, the basic thing is, why is this happening? I mean, unethical issues are happening because publishing is very important. I mean, step. The getting published is a very important step in your future research, and it is also a measure of how successful your research currently is. Otherwise, it can be questionable. That's why. For example, you can have a very brilliant idea. I mean, of course, but unless you make a research about it, it will be rubbish. And suppose that you also did a research about it and maybe get some nice results, but if you don't write about it, again, it will be rubbish. I mean, it will not be interesting. And if you write about it, like a thesis or a report maybe, but you don't get it published, again, it will not reach a wide audience, or it will not get recognized. It will not be worthy to read again. Similar problems. So that's why this is the ultimate goal or ultimate aim, to get published. That's why there is a lot of pressure on researchers, on scientific research community. That's why. What about the concerns about the principal harm? I think this is the most basics issue about the ethics, the most important thing, and it's the most severe form, I guess. The research we do should not result in harm to society or people. We should be very careful about this. Suppose that someone can be working in a design of a drug, for example, or a weapon, or vaccine, for example, like it's popular now. So whatever research we undertake, we should be careful about the principle of harm against the community members or the world itself, nature, for example, as well. Another concern about principle of harm. I mean, we shouldn't cause any problems to animal kingdom as well. Okay, that's the idea. I mean, the research being undertaken shouldn't cause any harm to society, but uh, it is our duty to justify whether what we did can be used for malignant purposes as well. It is our duty. I mean, this doesn't make sense to say that, okay, I didn't think about it like this. I just, I mean, invented a mechanism for doing this and that, but then they used it for weapon, for example, for a mass destruction weapon, a formidable weapon. I mean, this is not my maybe responsibility or something. Okay, this makes sense, but we can only be comfortable about it if we had elaborated all the possible results of this invention or this research in future as well. Okay, you did your work, you think about all the possible consequences, but you still miss a part. That's acceptable. But if you never think about it and skip about the outcomes of this research, it means that you may be you may be rushed this or neglected some important parts of the research as well. So we should be wary about, I mean, we should be alert about the concerns about the principle of harm issue in our studies. And there are concerns about data collection and usage. So, I mean, especially today and in future too, there will be lots and lots of data collected. Okay, especially privacy issues are a concern, you know, about this. I mean, the data we collect should be fit in some standards, some ethical standards, and they should be properly collected and used and analyzed. And then when their task is done, when the task is done, they should be purged, they should be deleted when their task is done. So that's why the data collection and usage standards are very important in such research. That's why we get some signatures and papers from the participants of experimental studies. I did this in my PhD as well. I need to get permission from the volunteers, and I collected their data and kept them anonymous and analyzed them as anonymous as well, blah blah, and so on. Okay, you should try to do your best. Make a brief research on the data collection and usage concerns in your particular area of research, and you should take some precautions not to violate any standards there, data handling standards there. The next one is concerns about fabrication of data. Okay. As lots of people are pretty focused on publishing, getting published means it means that if your results are good, I mean, you make an improvement or a contribution by improving something, it means that the chances that you will get published will be higher. So that's why some people try to tweak the input. Okay, like I mean, this is happening right here. Suppose that this is the system proposed in your study or something. this is the input data, and this is the output. Suppose that you want to propose a new system here, okay, with an improved output on some mechanism. But the real data can cause problems, so otherwise the real data, you just fabricate the data. There is no data at all, but you just fabricate the data, then process it in the system, and the output would be great and you will get published. But what is about this? It is fabricated. This is one of the unethical approaches to scientific study, and it is very, very, again, it is not easy to exploit, prove this. It needs a lot of work to prove that someone has fabricated, because that's why most of the researchers rely on well-known data sets, the data sets that many researchers used before, and they can download it from on the internet and use there for testing their system as well. That's why people rely on such common data sets other than private ones. Like you can claim that, okay, I'm using a private data of my company or of X company or Y company, and these are hidden data for security reasons or whatever, but this can raise some concerns. That's why of course they can be real data, but the fabrication questions or worries are always at some point. And concerns about falsification and validation of results. Here you have the data set, but you are you are making some deliberate mistakes on handling that data, like you're omitting some of them just to make you're just arranging the experimental and control groups. Although they're in random, they should be in random, you just categorize them as you like or something, then it means that you're falsifying the results. So that's why, again, this is the reason why people do that, getting published. That's why people are doing it, to get the best of results, to raise their chances of getting published. And there are also concerns about financial support as biasing factor. There are lots of news about this in the global news as well, global news companies as well. Especially these type of things are happening in, for example, medical science and weapon science. I don't know whether there's a science like that, but weapon research or weapons research or something. The idea is, if there is a huge sector, huge money, processed within a domain of research, there can be some issues about funding. If you are making a research about a rarely used area or less interesting area, there will not be some concerns about this funding. But there are lots of funding reserved for medical drug research, for example. So this means that if you're getting biased to get some funding from particular institutions, and if your future of research depends on their support for your laboratory or for your squad for your team that's making this research, you can get biased easily. That's why this is called another concern that you have to be careful about. And there are concerns about plagiarism. Okay, here you have an XY axis here, and this axis is about the your deliberateness here. This one is possibly accidental if you go down here, and if you go higher here, it means that what you did is deliberately, knowingly, and purposefully. And on the x-axis, what we see here is some of them are less serious plagiarism issues, and these are more serious ones. For example, paraphrasing too closely and incorrect but traceable citation. For example, the author made a reference to editor but instead of the author of the chapter. So these are less serious mistakes, and most possibly they are accidental as well. Okay. And what are more serious but again possibly accidental ones? These ones are research notes thought to be paraphrased but actually verbatim, like you copy all of them, like instead of paraphrasing. And accidental deletion of a major resource, for example, like missing citing an important paper, for example. These are more serious, of course, but again, they can be most possibly accidental. And what are the, more deliberate ones? For example, partial references in paragraph, minor sources are omitted, although they are there. Hiring an editor to heavily correct your paper. Okay, not good, but not a serious one, but not ethical. Widely available facts used without reference, short verbatim phrase without quotes. Okay, these are done. We usually do not make mistakes here accidentally. They are done deliberately, but they are just less serious. In others, research results without citation. Now we're getting serious here. And copied paper as presented as one's own. Okay, and this is a very major one. And another research results and presented as one's work. This is stealing. And bits and pieces of cut and pasted from various sources without referencing. As you see, these are more serious ones. Okay, this area is more serious, and these are less serious ones. Usually these happen in undergraduate and freshman papers, and these are higher levels of study, like graduate thesis or research papers. There are also concerns about self-plagiarism and duplicate submissions. In order to get cite, oversighting our previous work is not productive, as well as it's not ethical as well. So we should cite ourselves, our previous work or our colleagues' work, whatever, in the same lab, as long as they are really needed. Otherwise, it is unproductive, just citing ourselves. And multiple submissions is happening quite often, since evaluation processes take months, sometimes years. It takes too long, especially in prestigious journals, maybe. Some good ones, or maybe good ones, return answers quite faster, but maybe the other ones. For example, the publication from my PhD thesis took almost 2 years until getting published. Like the first 9 months for first reply, then another 9 months for the revision paper. So it took so long. That's why people tend to send their submission to multiple journals, multiple places. It means that although we sign a document that saying that, okay, I swear that I haven't submitted this paper to another journal or something, but people do it just for getting a quicker response. Okay, suppose that you submitted to these journals, but these haven't returned their answers yet, and this one get an acceptance. You can go for it and cancel the submissions here, maybe, or maybe not send there, not pursue, do not do the revisions there, because you already get accepted. But the thing is, the risk here or the unethical thing is here, you're just occupying some valuable referee hours or research hours here. For example, 3 referees here are evaluating your work, 3 referees here, 3 referees here, and also the editors are doing lots of communications between the referees as well. You see, you're just occupying communication channels instead of only one, and this is not fair, of course. And plus, there is a risk that these people can overlap. I mean, one of the referees here, for example, can also appear one of here as well, and it would be a disaster for you. I mean, when I think, I don't know how do they professionally handle this, but if you get caught like this, I think it's very risky because you might be blacklisted, something like that. If they find out that you're doing duplicate submissions, I mean, I wouldn't take a risk like this. I never did this. I mean, it doesn't worth the risk, in my opinion. Okay, so this is also unethical, of course. And there are concerns about the authorship of submission as well. Okay, this is always happening. Okay, if you have 2 people here, I mean, the first one and the second one, usually, okay, we have an idea about it. This one is the researcher and this one is the advisor or something. But when you have lots and lots of authors in submissions, it gets a bit tricky to evaluate who contributed at what degree. Some of the it depends on culture as well. Some of the in some of cultures, people write their advisors or professors first, then the students. But usually, in our domain, the credit is the first author gets the most credit. Like the major contribution lies on the first author, then the second one, then the third one, and finally the advisor or the organizer, coordinator of the research, usually. But it is really a shaded area in between. Usually we should be very careful about it, and take these orders should be in the order of contribution. For example, this one and this one, the one in gray area, this area, I mean this shaded area, should be in their, I mean, like this order in their contribution. Okay, A's contribution is larger than B, larger than C, larger than D, blah blah, and so on. Okay, this one is the coordinator, for example. This is the ideal case, and this is what is ethical. Okay, here in this session we try to underline a few cases of ethical issues here, namely these ones. Of course, they are not limited to this, but I mean, these are pretty common issues, ethical issues in research. So we try to elaborate on them and give some examples about each